You're watching GearWire.com. We are at Winter NAMM 2010, and we are in the lovely 65 amps room of respite from the chaos of the floor. And we are with 65 amps co-founder Peter Stroud.
Hello, Owen. How are you? Hello, folks in GearWire world.
I am well. Are you well?
I'm doing very well for the first day here at NAMM. I still have my voice.
That's cool. That's the first day.
That's good. Last year this time, it was gone.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of your involvement in 65 amps. We were at the factory a couple days ago, which was really a treat, and we talked to Dan. So sort of
Did you jam? Did you play?
Dan did.
Okay,
Dan jammed. Yeah.
Dan, I'm sure Dan did a lot of jamming.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Well, and that's when you jump behind the drums. You know,
he likes it loud. I was surprised that a 12-watt amp got as loud as it did. But, so what's your role in the company, sort of?
Well, you know, going way back, Dan and I just on sort of a fluke. Well, actually, Dan started building the amps, so we're always calling each other, talking about guitar amps, and I'd hipped him to these new little 18-watt Marshalls. They weren't new at the time; they were old vintage ones that were very hard to come by. And next thing I know, he says, "I'm going to build one." You know, which he just went online, found the schematic. There was a whole, you know, forum of guys that were talking about them. It was very organic. You know, everybody sort of doing these home projects. So, you know, one step beyond Heathkit projects now. And but then he said he wanted to build me an amp because I was playing with Sheryl and trying to find an amp that would be more suitable. Lower volume, get the sound that I wanted. I was using attenuators and plexiglass, and it was sort of confining. It didn't work well. So one thing led to another, you know, where he said, "Man, I've got this amp, I want you to try it out." And then he said, "I'm starting this little amp company." And by that time, I had learned how to work on my own amplifiers. I had vintage amps, and they were always breaking, so eventually I had to learn for myself how to make them, you know, hold up on the road. And by that time, I learned how to do tweaks, and after a while, I was like, all right, I know what I want out of an amplifier. And so just trying to keep it short, we decided, hey man, let's do this together. This could be a lot of fun, and take it from a player standpoint, you know, of creating our own amplifier. And so we went to the NAMM show in 2004, the Summer NAMM, and we got orders. And then all of a sudden we had our first deal by Winter NAMM in 2005, and then here we are now, 2009, we're rolling. So, so my role, you know, man, we brought the company up together of designing the amp. You know, we had friends involved that helped us with the look, but I mean, it was up to us to figure it out, put them together, and then to tune them. And over a course of a year and a half, Dan was working on it out of his shop at the back. Yeah. And anytime I'd come out west, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so anytime I'd come out west, it was at his house, and we'd be up till late at night tweaking the thing. And he'd be calling me on the phone, you know, "Hey man, check this out, see what you think." Which, when you hear of a phone,
what do you do with that?
You know. So, you know, my involvement now, of course, is, you know, we're always both involved with the designs and what we're going for next, for the next amplifier we want to shoot for. And, you know, once the London, our first flagship amp was built, that was great. It was let's make something with a little more power. Let's double up the power. And then, all right, we want something with a master volume and these kind of features. So there's always some sort of inspiration. It's like writing for a new album or something.
It really sounds like it's sort of the inspiration for developing a new amp is just kind of what you guys feel like you want to try out next. Is that accurate?
Want to hear? Yeah, that's accurate. You know, it's, you know, tone and guitarist. Tone to a guitarist is, I don't know, subjectional is the word, but you know, it's like the flavor of the month or flavor of the year. I used to go for maybe 2 or 3 years with the same sound, and by then I was ready to change up. You know, I was ready for something new, you know? And so it's sort of the same way. Yeah, this is great, but man, it'd be fun if we had something that did this. Well, let's try to make one. You know, and that's essentially what it's like. We figure out, what could we do that'd be different? Oh man, it'd be great if we had a smaller amp in the line. So we came out with a Little Elvis, and now Well, that little Elvis has EL84 tubes. What would this amp sound like with 6 V6s? And now we have the Tupelo, because it changes it entirely. And it's not just popping new tubes in, it's a whole rework. You have to get new transformers, you have to retune it, and it's a job, but it's so much fun, Yeah. So we totally are tweak heads.
Did you have any kind of any sort of electrical engineering background, or was sort of just your fixing broken amps was like your main sort of like education?
When I was on the road, with this band called Dream Surreal that was out of Athens, Georgia, when all these cool bands were coming out of that area. And right around that same time, I was getting into collecting vintage amps, and I had an old Plexi Marshall and old blackface Fenders that I would take out on the road, and I'd buy them off of a shop and take them immediately out and use them, and they'd break the next night. They just weren't, they aged. They're 30-year-old amps or whatever. So I'd take them to a repair guy out on the road, and they'd fix it, and then it would break again the next night after I dropped $100 to get it fixed. So while I was on the road, I got an Electronics 101 book, literally. I mean, the guitar amp's a pretty basic, design out of old RCA tube manuals were the first amp designs. So,
60-year-old technology.
Yeah, it is, and so getting a hold of that, I taught myself enough to where I could at least go into my amplifiers and make them bulletproof, to where I could dime it out, turn every knob on 10, beat the crap out of it, and it would hold up. And then I learned how to start tweaking and stuff. That is the extent of my electronic knowledge. It ends there. Now, obviously, we have learned way more over the years of having the amp company, but we, of course, know how to employ the help of friends that really do have the electronic knowledge and that are gurus and whizzes. And then so Dan and I, we know what we want to hear, and we know enough about how to go about getting it.
So would you say that there's a sort of a core tone characteristic that all the 65 amps have in common? And if there is, how would you describe it?
It's funny. Today somebody was saying to me that he felt that all of our amps, regardless of what new model we bring out, tends to have a similarity in sound, which to me is it's sort of it's not a fluke. I think it's simply because, again, we're tuning it to how we hear them. So that's great that they at least have a common thread. I think beyond that, what we strive for is we do not chimp out on the parts at all. We realize that the heart of the sound can be the transformers, the capacitors, whether they're new or they're old. We're using carbon comp resistors versus, we know where we can use flame proofs in order to keep the amp stable. Right. When you do peg it on 10, you've got 3 distortion pedals on at once, right. So, yeah, we just, I think our goal is to make them bulletproof and the best sound possible, not cutting any corners.
So this, the Tupelo, that's sort of the new amp for this show, right? Can you talk a little about this design and sort of what it brings that's new to the 65 amps line?
Well, it's the predecessor to this one that is of a similar design circuit is the Little Elvis. Yeah. And which is 12 watts with a pair of EL84s, more or less. And then we have our master voltage that'll drop it down essentially to 2 to 3 watts power. So literally, it was, Dan was thinking, man, let's see what it sounds. It'd be great to hear this amp with 6 V6s in it. And that means getting new transformers made, which we use Mercury Magnetics transformers. And they always will send us some prototypes and do a few different winds until we hear things. They're musicians themselves, so they know. And so it was mainly just, hey, man, this is such a great sounding amp. Let's try it with 6 V6s. Cool. And get sort of an American sounding, because 6 V6s are associated with old Fender Deluxe reverbs, for instance, that kind of thing.
So the aesthetic of the amps, how much input do you have in the aesthetics? And
Oh man, quite a bit. There was, first of all, we had a really good friend of Dan's that had the general concept and drawings for us of sort of that cathedral front. It's like, wow, that is so cool. And then he had drawn in these vertical vents. As you can see on these, they, more like that. That was the first one. There's a London, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, okay, how do we create something like this? And from there, it was, going in, to Adobe Illustrator and creating drawings. And then it was going to a cabinet maker and saying, how can we do this? And they, all the way down to figuring out how to get the material to stretch properly. And then to get the vents cut, that was a big chore, because it's going right across a joint.
Oh, right.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors like that we never imagined would be an issue.
Yeah, just get it to look the way you want it to look.
Exactly. And so it's sort of just like something that molds together. It's, it would look cool if this sort of it was inset into it, to get more of a relief dimension feel. And I mean, every aspect, the width here, the width there, it was a molding thing. It took months to get it to where we get it. Okay, that's it.
Yeah. So you're touring with 65 amps right now?
Yes.
Okay. And which model do you have on tour?
I use the London and a Monterey, which is our 23 watt 6V6 amplifier that's in the same line. We have the Soho and the Monterey and the Stone Pony that all have a similar front end.
Right. What was the response from your bandmates when you first brought this amp of your own creation?
They were really into it. Yeah, I was with Sheryl, and they bought two of the first five. Oh, yeah, which is Sheryl bought one. She said, "I'll take one." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And then Tim Smith, who is our bass player, guitarist, and whenever Sheryl is playing bass, Tim plays guitar, and vice versa. So he said, "Man, that thing sounds great. I'll take one." So by the time of our next big tour that Sheryl was going out, which I think was the Wildflower record, maybe? Can't remember now. But, we all were using 65s. And the tour started in London, which was promo tour. And so we rehearsed over there, and it was like, these amps will work. I know they're going to work. We're, thousands of miles away from home, and they worked, and they sounded great. But I mean, if a cord wasn't plugged in all the way and it was going, brrr, Peter, what's up with the amp? I was a whipping boy for that for a while, But,
was that a good? Did you sort of work out all the bugs on that first tour?
And it was to mix the two, to mix the gig, which is it's there's a lot of pressure going on there.
Right,
there's a lot going on. It's a big gig, and then the amp company where you go, and these amps, they're going to get us through this David Letterman show, or they're going to get us through Saturday Night Live, where it's live.
Yeah, it's more than just your playing that's on display, right?
Exactly. So Dan said he'd be at home just watching SNL, just thinking, all right, this thing's going to work.
Right.
That was what was going through our head, as much as anything. But as far as sound, it was just so rewarding. It was amazing to think, wow, it's our amplifiers that is our sound, our live sound. So we've been using the exact same amps ever since.
Very cool. Do you have an idea of where you're going to go after the Tupelo?
Yes, we do. We have another amp that we're working on. It's too infant stage to really get into it now, but it'll be something. I know what I want to hear, and it'll be probably something that's a more aggressive kind of rock head that we like to do. It's not going to be something that's a super high gain thing, but just again, it's like another sound to the palate.
Yeah.
Right. But now we have our Apollo bass amp. That was a big offering. We had a lot of people that keep asking us, when are you going to make a bass amp? Well, in the boutique world, there's not much, call or demand yet.
Right.
But they're, the old Ampeg B15s are getting harder to come by, and they're getting more expensive. And it was just another, man, it'd be a real challenge. It'd be really cool to try to come up with a good bass amp, a good studio, good stage amp. Again, stage volumes universally seem to be dropping.
Right. Yep.
Due to in-ears, due to just people being more practical about their hearing, whatever the case may be. Transport, the whole bit. So yeah, again, with bass amps, all they care about is that they get a nice, good, full sound on stage. Because it's, it's DI out to the front of house otherwise.
Right.